It was a somber day in Jerusalem. The clouds hung heavy over the city as if the very sky foreshadowed a cosmic upheaval. The atmosphere seemed to hold its breath, in reverence or fear, no one could say. The streets, though crowded with people stirred by the festivity of Passover, were enveloped by an invisible tension, a weight that came from something beyond the human. At the top of Golgotha, 3 crosses would be raised, but only one of them would divide time into before and after. And at the center of the scene was he, Longinus, the Roman centurion. Longinus had witnessed executions before. It was his duty, his profession. Under his command, dozens of men had learned to obey without hesitation, to kill without remorse. His armor, polished and marked by time, was a symbol of honor and fear. But on that day, something in his eyes betrayed a discomfort he himself did not understand. As he oversaw the preparations for the crucifixion, his mind wandered, strangely restless. The condemned was called Jesus of Nazareth. Unlike other prisoners, he did not scream, did not struggle, did not beg for mercy. He walked, wounded, exhausted, but with a serenity that defied logic. When his eyes met Longinus's, the centurion felt as if he were being seen from within, stripped bare, scanned by something pure, true, unchanging. It disturbed him more than any cry of pain he had ever heard on the battlefield. If you're here for the first time, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Here, we reveal forgotten stories, hidden testimonies, and the spiritual journey of those who touched eternity and were transformed forever. Don't stop following until the end. Longinus's story might change the way you see the cross. The path to Golgotha was marked by blood, sweat, and silence. Jesus carried the cross as one who bears the fate of the world, and even as he stumbled, he did not complain. Longinus marched ahead, clearing a path through the crowd. His gaze constantly drifted to the condemned, trying to understand what was different about this man. He had executed rebels, thieves, traitors, but this one seemed to carry something else, an invisible burden, a calling. Mary, Jesus' mother, tried to draw near. Her steps were frail, her soul a quaking earth. Beside her, young John fought through the crowd to ensure she could see her son one last time. Longinus saw the scene with the eyes of a trained soldier, but within him something twisted. A mother facing her son's death, a pain Rome would never comprehend. When they reached the hilltop, the soldiers began the ritual. Nails, hammer, muffled screams. Jesus was laid on the cross like a lamb on the altar. Longinus stood watching. He did not move, did not command. He only bore witness. When the nail pierced the condemned's wrist, the sky seemed to shudder. And when the cross was raised, something inside the centurion broke. It was as if the earth were watching, the heavens bowing, the angels holding back tears. From the height of the cross, Jesus looked at those who killed him and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Longinus heard each syllable as if they were knives in his soul. Forgiveness. For whom? For them? For the soldiers? For himself? How could someone nailed to a cross cry out for forgiveness and not for justice? The hours passed, and the sun began to hide. An unnatural darkness covered the entire region, as if creation were in mourning. Longinus tried to maintain order among the soldiers, but the unease grew. The people murmured, the Pharisees began to disperse. Only the faithful, the broken, and the curious remained. And then came the cry, a shout that pierced the centuries. My God, why have you forsaken me?" The cry of an innocent, of one who bore the weight of the world. And then silence, a supernatural silence, until the ground trembled. An earthquake split the earth. The veil of the temple tore from top to bottom, and in that moment Longinus fell to his knees. With tears he could not explain, he whispered before all, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." Something in him had changed. It was not merely shock. It was revelation. It was not just remorse, it was faith. Longinus, the centurion of the empire, the instrument of Rome, was now a witness to the greatest truth of the universe. He had seen with his own eyes, and more than that, he had touched the sacred. Soon after, the Jews asked Pilate to have the bodies removed before the Sabbath. It was necessary to break their legs to hasten death. Longinus received the order and relayed it. The soldiers acted quickly with the two thieves. But when they reached Jesus, they saw he was already dead. Even so, to confirm, Longinus took his spear. It was protocol, but for him, it was a final act. He approached the cross and pierced the side of the crucified. From the dead body flowed blood and water. Longinus stood frozen. The blood ran down the spear, splattered on his face. And according to ancient traditions, in that moment, he was healed of an eye condition, a partial blindness that had plagued him for years. But more than a physical healing, his spiritual eyes were opened. For the first time he saw, truly saw. The following days were turbulent. Rumors that Jesus' body had vanished spread like wildfire. Some spoke of appearances, others of conspiracies. But Longinus needed no proof. He knew what he saw on the cross was more than enough. Death had not defeated him. Death had been defeated. What does a Roman centurion do when he discovers he killed the Son of God? Return to the barracks? Simply ignore it and move on? Longinus couldn't. He abandoned his post. He surrendered his sword. And he left, not out of cowardice, but out of faith. Longinus wandered Jerusalem without a uniform, without orders, without direction, but with something new in his chest, a restlessness that burned like a live ember. He sought the disciples. He wanted to find them, hear them, understand what he had only glimpsed on the cross. It wasn't easy. The city still pulsed with fear and tension. Jesus' followers were scattered, hidden, but the message was already beginning to spread like the wind, subtle, invisible, but impossible to contain. When he finally made contact with some of them, Longinus was met with suspicion. After all, he was the centurion, the same one who had overseen the crucifixion. But his presence carried no threat, only humility. He didn't want to justify the past. He wanted to redeem the future. And so he began to listen. He sat at the feet of the apostles, heard their stories, Jesus' words, the miracles, the teachings. And with each account, he confirmed what he had felt. This man was different. He was the Messiah. Longinus's transformation was silent but profound. He didn't preach with eloquence or deliver fiery speeches, but his mere presence was enough. Those who saw this former soldier now in pilgrim sandals, eyes wet with faith, and the spear that once killed now used as a walking staff, could not remain indifferent. It was impossible to hear his story without chills. "I saw him die," he would say. "I heard his last words. I pierced his side with my spear, and even so, I was forgiven." There was power in his testimony. He didn't speak of legends or rumors. He spoke of blood, wood, and tears. He spoke of a real encounter. And because of that, crowds began to listen to him. Longinus journeyed north, crossing regions of Cappadocia and Caesarea. In what is now Turkey, he found small Christian communities. He sat with the poor, tended wounds, shared bread. His life was now different. He sought no recognition. He only wanted to proclaim that death had been defeated and that forgiveness was real. Wherever he went, he left seeds of faith. Many converted not only because of his words, but because of the authority with which he said, "I saw, I was there." And those who heard him knew it was no act. It was truth. He bore the scar in his eyes and the tenderness in his gaze of one who had seen eternity. But the message of the cross was an affront to Rome. The empire would not tolerate the idea of a king who was not Caesar, much less a former soldier preaching in villages that the true Lord had died and risen. The news reached the ears of Roman authorities, and with it came the sentence. Longinus was arrested, chained, interrogated, threatened, but he did not back down. When asked if he still believed in this Jesus, he replied, "I don't just believe, I follow him." They gave him the chance to deny, to save his own life, but he knew he had already been saved the day he knelt before the cross. Condemned as a traitor, Longinus was taken to an isolated hill outside the city. Some friends followed, weeping silently. He, however, was serene. There was peace on his face. Before the sword fell on his neck, he raised his eyes to the sky and whispered, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." The same words he had once heard from a condemned man now became his final prayer. Longinus died as a martyr. His blood fell to the earth like a seed, and soon Christians in Cappadocia began visiting his tomb. They said miracles happened there. The blind regained sight, the sick were healed. But more than that, hardened hearts were touched by his story. Over the centuries, the church recognized his faith. Canonized as Saint Longinus, he became a symbol of the power of redemption. The executioner who became a believer, the soldier who became a disciple, the man who pierced the side of Christ and, in that act, had his own heart pierced by the truth. But his story didn't end there. Longinus's name echoed through the ages, not as a stain of guilt, but as a testimony of hope. Because if even the one who drove a spear into Jesus could be transformed, then no one is beyond the reach of grace. Today, the spear of Longinus is remembered as the lance of destiny, and there are legends about it scattered through history. But its true legacy is not the weapon he wielded. It is the heart that was transformed. The one who once served Rome now serves the Lamb. The one who was blind now sees. The one who was merely a number among legions is now a name inscribed in the heavens. Perhaps you're wondering, what does this have to do with you? Everything. Because Longinus was not special. He was not a prophet. He was not a disciple. He was an ordinary man, an executioner, an instrument of oppression, but even so, he was reached. Jesus' gaze found him. The words of the cross cut him. The blood of Christ healed him. This means that no matter what you've done or who you've been, the same forgiveness is available today. The cross still speaks, and it still transforms. You may have lived in darkness for years. You may have denied, rejected, mocked. You may have been like Longinus, hardened by life, by war, by routine. But if you hear the voice of the Spirit today, do not harden your heart, because there is redemption even for those who stood on the wrong side of the spear. Perhaps you're standing at the foot of the cross, and perhaps, like Longinus, you've seen Jesus' pain up close, but still don't understand what it means. Today, you can fall to your knees. You can say with faith, "Truly, this man is the Son of God." And your life will never be the same. If this story touched you, if something burned within you, don't ignore it. This is the call. This is the hour. Subscribe to the channel, share this message, and help others discover that grace is stronger than guilt. Because Longinus is not just a distant memory, he is a mirror of us all, and his journey is an invitation. Now watch the next video appearing on the screen. It's the story of the 12 apostles, simple, frail men, but ignited by faith. Men who, like Longinus, transformed the world. Click and discover how a small flame of faith can topple empires and change the course of history. The cross was not the end. For Longinus, it was the beginning, the start of a life marked no longer by the sword, but by faith. A simple gesture, a spear, a glance, and everything changed. The man who served Caesar now served the eternal King. And you, what is your response to the cross? The story is still being written, and perhaps today, a new chapter begins with you. Don't ignore the call. There is redemption even for those who stood on the wrong side. Because on the cross, even soldiers find salvation.